Well, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. I just wanted to take the time to let you know how much I appreciated our time that we had together in our meeting this morning. I thought it was really productive, and I was really, really happy to be able to sit down and talk to you both about what services and supports we can provide for Olivia. What I like to do after the fact usually is just do some sort of a recap, and in this way, I just decided to put together a video because I know how difficult it can be sometimes after you leave a meeting. There's maybe questions that you still have or things that you're not remembering completely clearly. And I just thought this would be an opportunity to recap what we talked about. And then you're able to play it back on your own time, maybe share it with some other important people in your lives as part of Olivia's support system. So I just wanted to give this to you as a resource to kind of go over the things that we had talked about today in our meeting. So remember, I really wanted to talk about how I appreciated you as parents wanting to know how to support your child. And that brings it back to, our role as educators is how do we help support all of our learners? We have 32 students in a classroom, and each and every one of them has individual needs and individual areas that they are strong in, and that they have areas that they can have some additional improvement in. So it helps us remember that focus of what are we doing to help all of the students in our classroom. And that really goes into our focus. We've had a tremendous instructional shift over the last few years within our district and our community. That's really exciting. And it goes right back into the conversation of what we've just been talking about. We are changing our focus. Instead of being on teaching, our focus is it really needs to be on learning. A lot of times as educators, we've gotten so wrapped up in what I need to teach my students. And instead of looking at it from the lens of what do my students need to learn? What are they learning? And what do they still need to learn? So it's really going back to that individual mindset of what do our students need to learn, and not so much of what do I need to teach. This goes back to our professional learning communities. I touched on this a little bit in our meeting this morning, but our district has implemented professional learning communities, which we often call PLCs. And these are groups of teachers that work together to ensure high quality instruction for all of our students. They're often grade level at the elementary, subject and particular class level at the middle and high school level. So let's say biology teachers are a PLC at the high school. But maybe in our building, all fourth grade teachers are a PLC, and they work together to develop plans and strategies and interventions, and they collect and analyze data about how our students are doing, and they really support each other in how to further the learning of all of our students. So this goes back to our PLC process, the changing the focus from teaching to learning. And there's four questions that are involved in the PLC process, but two of them really lend themselves to this conversation that we've been having today. And that is, how will we respond if some of our students don't learn what we want them to learn? And then also, how will we extend the learning of students that maybe are already proficient? Maybe students have already mastered a concept and they're ready for more. What do we do to help those students? And it really goes back to that individualized instructions for all students. And what do we need to do to further their learning? So I know I talked about types of interventions that we have in our school. We use lots of acronyms, we use lots of jargon. So hopefully this will be a recap of what we talked about. We use something called RTI, which is response to intervention, and sometimes it's referred to as multi-tiered systems of support. So imagine it a tier. And so we have 3 tiers that we provide all of our students if necessary, and I'm going to go through each one of them for you today. So the first one is all of our students receive individual instruction based on the gradual release model. So what that means is we're in our core instruction areas for an 80-minute block. So for ELA, for math, for social studies, for science, all the students are in an 80-minute period with their general education teacher. The first 20 minutes should be in direct instruction, meaning every single student should get the direct instruction from their teacher. That would be considered tier 1. 20 minutes of guided instruction. So the teacher's up in front of the classroom and they're guiding the students through the learning. So instead of giving the instruction, we're working through something together. In math, this might be we're working through problems on the board together as an entire class. This would also be considered tier 1. Everyone is receiving the same instruction. Then we have 20 minutes of productive group or partner work. Our students sit together in tables, in pods, and so oftentimes we have them work together with their partners, with their teammates, with their kids that they're sitting next to each other. And during this time period, we're able to do some tier two interventions. As well as that 20 minutes of individual learning within that block, we're also able to do tier two interventions. So I'm going to talk about what that looks like in a moment. But just know that each core area of your students' learning is going to be in this 80-minute block, and we're asking our teachers to model this gradual release method through their instruction. So what is a tier one intervention? Tier one is that every single student receive the same instruction. The 32 students in the room, they're all getting the same individual, and they're getting the same instruction from their teacher. But what does differentiation look like at this level? We know of the 32 students sitting in that classroom, they all learn a little bit differently. They all might find success in certain areas and they might need a little bit additional support. So, what is that differentiation? What do we do differently for kids at this level? It might mean that we have flexible grouping. We have kids working together and they're leaning on their peers and they're saying, I don't, what do you mean about that? Can you tell me how that relates to this concept or whatever? They might be working with their team members. There might be some individual supports. I might realize that this student is much more of a visual learner, so I might provide them with some additional materials, same materials that I've given all their students, but I might put something on their desk and be like, remember that this is what this looks like. I've seen that a lot in ELA classrooms. My daughter was learning how to spell, and her teacher had put some additional writing on her paper to try to remember when you're doing a P, it goes like this. And this is how we remember that the P goes this way and the D goes this way. And so it's just that individual one-on-one sort of instruction that a student might need to have something kind of solidify in their brain. Um, there might be some additional practice. So this group over here might be working on spelling words, and this group over here on the other side of the room, they might be working on their vocabulary, and this group on the other side of the room might be working on something with oral fluency. And then we rotate throughout the groups that everybody has that time to work on those additional skills. And then there's always a detailed screening of all the students and their progress. As a teacher, we're constantly checking for understanding. We're constantly looking to see if our students understand what we're talking about, if they're able to apply and show us that they know the skills. So that's happening for all students at the tier one level. Every single student in the classroom is receiving tier one instruction. And this obviously goes back to our essential standards and our learning targets. Like I talked about, we identify what we want all students to know and what is the learning target. What are they trying to meet by the end of the class period or the end of the day? And then we're constantly checking to see how our students are doing, who's still struggling, who needs a bit of reteaching, and who has mastered the content. So this is tier one. Everybody's receiving tier one instruction. Now, sometimes students need a little bit of additional time and instruction for areas that they just are not able to demonstrate mastery in quite yet. And so, what does this look like? We're not teaching extra. We're not teaching more. We're reteaching in a different way using the same material. So I'm not giving them additional books to read. I'm not giving them additional worksheets to work on. I'm simply, as the teacher, teaching them in a different way, in a direct instruction to see if my doing something a little bit different, giving them some individual time, they're able to gather and understand the learning in a way that they weren't able to at that tier one level. We might be grouping students during productive group or partner time. So these 4 students are working on this specific area that they're not quite proficient in. And we always want to make it so the teacher moves to the students. We do not want our students to feel like they're singled out. So somebody having to go to the front of the room and sit at the teacher's desk and get some additional help. No, we want all students to remain in their spots with their peers. And then as the teacher, we move around the room to provide that additional instruction to them. Oftentimes at tier 3, it's going to be 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week, and it's during our core instruction. I am not taking the students out of the classroom and bringing them somewhere else so they're missing that instructional time with their peers. No, we're doing it during that individual learning time, that group partner time. We're doing it right in the classroom, right during the core block, but just providing some of that additional tier 2 support that some students may need. And then for some students who are still not able to master the concepts through that tier one and tier two support, sometimes they need to move up to tier three. This is a very small percentage of students, but like we said, all students are learners at different levels at different times, and we want to ensure that they're getting the supports that they need to help master the content and apply their learning in the essential standards. And so, what does that look like for tier three? It's for, like I said, it's for students that need some additional support. This is going to be supplemental. This is going to be additional materials. It's research based materials and it's all district approved materials. So, if your child does receive tier three instruction, it's going to look the same if they're in Mrs. Johnson's class or if they're in Mrs. Peterson's class. So, it's district approved material that is known and is research based to show helps elevate the learning of students that need some additional support. As much as possible, this is going to occur in the classroom during that core instructional time. Occasionally, it might involve the students leaving the classroom or maybe during a study period, they might have some individual one-on-one instruction. Oftentimes, this is going to be individual or small group instruction. There might be 3 students working on the same skills. Well, of course, we're going to group them together and provide those students that additional support. It's usually completed by the core education teacher, but sometimes there's a teacher assistant or paraeducator who is trained in these types of interventions that are going to be able to work one-on-one with your student and help give them that additional support and instruction in the core area that we're talking about. And then, of course, I just want to go back to this is always, always, always going back to the individual student. What does each child need? I love this quote by George Evans. Every student can learn, just not in the same day or in the same way. Um, just like your child, Olivia, she's got strength, she's got areas of challenges, and it is our job to figure out what is the right way for her at the right time. And so I really appreciate your concern and your questions regarding what interventions look like and how that might impact her. But I hope that I've given you enough information for you to realize that this is really an individualized education approach to all of our students, just seeing where they're at, seeing what areas they might need some additional support, and then building in those structures and support within the school day to ensure that they're able to access all levels of education. Please let me know if you have any questions. Please reach out via phone or email to ask anything that maybe wasn't covered in our meeting this morning or in this video today. I really look forward to continuing to work together to support Olivia along the way. All right. Have a great day.